Probably you have heard about the recent tensions between Poland and Israel, and in this movie I want to explain the situation from our perspective. At the beginning I want to say that this movie has nothing to do with the hate speech. It's not about hating any nation. We just, as Poles, we think that recently there has been far too many lies said about our country. So we need to explain a few things. That's why I'm making this movie. Recently, Israel Katz, who is acting as a foreign minister of Israel, he said that Poles sucked anti-Semitism with their mother's milk. There were also many other statements suggesting that Poland were collaborating with Germany during the Second World War. Well, however, the Polish government did not collaborate with the Germans during the Second World War. And for example, did you know that Poland was the only country in the occupied Europe during the war where helping Jews were threatened with death penalty? And yet around 100,000 Poles were helping Jews during the German occupation. Among them was also a Catholic nun, beatified sister Marta Wołodowska from Sołonin. She was murdered because she was rescuing Jews and she was hiding them in her monastery. Up to this day, there are 6,863 ethnic Poles who have been recognized by the State of Israel as righteous among the nation, and it is far, far more than citizens of any other country. Among them was the Ulmas family. Imagine a husband, a pregnant wife, and 6 children were killed because they were hiding Jews. Also, some Polish nationalists were recognized as righteous among the nation. One of them was Edward Kemnitz, who was saving Jews during the Second World War. Also, a Polish nationalist, Jan Mosdorf, was killed in Auschwitz concentration camp because he was helping Jews. So, as you have heard, yes, many Poles were killed in Auschwitz, not only Jews. Actually, the concentration camp Auschwitz was primarily built as a concentration camp, as a place where Germans were killing Polish people. But in the recent years, many journalists started using the name Polish death camps, and we are strongly against the usage of this name because it's kind of suggesting that it has been Poles who built these concentration camps, which is obviously false. Poland was occupied by Germany from the west and by the Soviets from the east. We were the victim of the war, so we had nothing to do with the concentration camps. We were the victims. And actually, Poles were the first to give information to the world about the Holocaust. For example, Polish soldier Witold Pilecki, he volunteered to go to Auschwitz, to get imprisoned in Auschwitz, and he gave a lot of information. He was the first one to give reports about the situation in Auschwitz. And in 1942, Edward Raczyński, he wrote the first official report on Holocaust, informing the Western public about the murders, about the crimes. And this was the first official speech defending all the Jews. So as you have seen, the Polish government was trying to defend the Jews. And we cannot just say that the Poles were responsible for the Holocaust. Of course, I'm not denying that there were some examples of Poles who collaborated with the Germans, but there were also many Jews who collaborated with the Germans. In every ghetto, there was so-called Jewish ghetto police. So they were used by the Germans primarily for securing the deportation of other Jews to the concentration camps. And during the Second World War, around 6 million Polish citizens died. And yes, half of them were Jews because many Jews lived in Poland during this time. But you don't hear a lot about the Polish victims. It's mainly because we don't have so much money to make big Hollywood movies about our victims. And here on the picture, you see the image of Warsaw straight after the Second World War. And during the war, more than 80% of the buildings in Warsaw were destroyed, and we didn't get much reparation, any money to rebuild it. After the Second World War, Poland suffered again. The year 1945, it was not the end of the war for us, because we were occupied by the Soviets and the communism was introduced in Poland. And many Polish soldiers who were fighting with the Germans were now killed or imprisoned together with the Germans. And the Soviet propaganda portrayed Polish soldiers as fascists, as the collaborators of Hitler, which was obviously false. And many Poles were arrested. Of course, you've heard of Auschwitz, but did you know that after the year 1945, in Poland, there were also many work camps, many prisons, and the daily life in these camps was almost as difficult, as hard as the life in Auschwitz. In some cases, even more difficult. And one was of these work camps was in Świętochłowice. It was called Zgoda, and it was run by Salomon Morel, who was a Jew, and more than 1,855 Poles died in this camp. After the Second World War, many Jews from the East came to Poland, and many Jews started collaborating with the communist regime. And many of them changed their names to hide their origin, and they took another names that sound more like Polish ones. And for example, Joseph Goldberg, he changed his name to Józef Różański, and Isidor Kurz changed his name to Józef Czaplicki. And both of them were responsible for the tortures that took place in the Mokotów prison in Poland. And many Polish soldiers who fought against the Germans during the war were kept, tortured and murdered in this prison. Among them was Witold Pilecki, the same one who volunteered to go to Auschwitz, who wrote about the crimes, who wrote about the Holocaust. He was tortured, he was murdered, sentenced to death, and we still don't know where his body is. And before dying, he said that the life in this prison was far more difficult than life in Auschwitz. Another Jew who was responsible for killing Polish people was Frank Bleichmann. However, recently, the United States Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, he talked about Frank Bleichmann, but he talked about him as he was a hero. A hero? Well, actually, Frank Bleichmann was responsible for the prisons and work camps in Kielce, where many Poles died. So as you have seen, there were many Jews who collaborated with the communists after the war, after the Second World War, but we don't hear a lot being said about this. Another issue that I want to mention is the Act 447 just, which the government of United States accepted in May 2018, despite many protests. And this act, it can be actually now used to blackmail Polish government to pay the large amount of money to Jews and Jewish organization. And this is very controversial because normally the hurlers' properties, they are transferred to the state treasury. So for example, if there is a person who dies and doesn't have any close or family, any relatives, did not sign to give her property to anyone, the property is transferred to the state treasury. But in this situation, the Act 447 just is suggesting that these properties would be transferred to the Jews or Jewish organization. And this is actually a large amount of money, which we don't have. So now I would like to give you some quotation from the letter of Polish-American organization against this act. They said that Poland must not be held responsible for the genocide and property expropriations which are conducted by her German and Soviet occupiers. Because unlike France, Belgium, Holland, Norway, Denmark, Slovakia, Croatia, Hungary, Romania, Lithuania and others, Poland did not cooperate with Germany during the Second World War. So we cannot put Poland in the same position as Germany because it's not fair. So this is the first position of the people who wrote this letter. And the second thing is that Germany has already paid since 1952 on the basis of the Luxembourg Agreement the equivalent of over $100 billion to the individual Jewish organization and to the State of Israel. So Poland, which is one of the most affected countries by the German occupation, has got almost no restitution payments for what some scholars, like the American historian Richard Lucas, called the situation of Poland as a forgotten Holocaust. So he said that the Polish situation is a forgotten Holocaust because there were many victims and no one actually cares about it. So to put this simple, in the end of the movie, Poland was the victim of the war and we should not confuse the victim with the murderer. Our government did not collaborate with the Germans and many Polish people died during the Second World War and we lost a lot. So as you have seen recently, there have been far too many statements about Poland, and I'm really grateful to see that there are some people on YouTube and other channels who are from United States, from Great Britain, from other countries, and they start talking about the situation of Poland because they see that this is unjust. I'm really appreciating it. And if you would like to find out more, there are some hashtags on Twitter with the information STOPantipolonism. So you can also start using this hashtag if you want to help us. Or you can also start using hashtag Poland Against Lies. If you see it on Twitter, there are also some informations in English and another hashtag which I want to promote. If you just want to show your support, you can take a photo with this hashtag I support Poland or put this hashtag on your Twitter. And if you also want to make a movie, why not? Because as I told, we don't have much money to make a big Hollywood movies. So we just appreciate any support you can give us in this situation. So please spread this news, spread this video, and share this information. It's not about hating any nation, it's just to tell the truth about the history, and I'm sure if any of your country will be in the similar situation that Poland is now, we will be very happy to help you. So thank you a lot for watching this video.